Good day, everybody, and welcome to Tea Time with Tamra. And so this is our first kickoff of this, and I'm so excited to have such an amazing individual, Melissa Drew, to be the first person participating in this. And so, but again, I also want to thank ISM New Jersey for sponsoring this and to provide this type of knowledge to all of you out there listening today. So again, my name is Tamra Pawloski. I am the Global Director for Indirect Procurement at Corteva Agriscience, and we are the leading agricultural chemical and seed company. And so let's get started. So Melissa, I am honored today to be interviewing you and asking you a couple questions. Melissa has 28 years of consulting and industry experience in procurement and supply chain. So can't wait to hear what you have to say. Her supplier diversity career began in late 2005. And since then, she's developed new strengths and strengthened existing supplier diversity programs for the Fortune 100 companies. So a lot you can take from that team here. And consulted with several procurement application providers on supplier diversity data, reporting, and analytics. And of course, is an executive mentor and coach. And I'm just honored and privileged to be here today with you, Melissa. So cheers, let's start our tea time.
I have mint tea. I brought mint tea with me, Moroccan mint tea, yes.
Excellent, love it. So would you mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll jump right into questions.
Yeah, so I'd say, early in my career when I was working as a consultant, and then I also went and worked in the industry in New York City. I became, built that relationship, became an ISM New York member. I also back in 2005 when I was working for Avon. And as a result, supplier diversity was just really becoming, more than just a trend. There were a lot of companies that were doing work with the government, so it was becoming more important to focus on the contractual obligations of diversity. And then that's when I think it was really this kind of takeoff. Well, gosh, supplier diversity should not just be focused in, government and public sector. We should be bringing that out into the rest of the enterprise as well. So it's around that time is really when I started to focus on diverse suppliers and what it meant and how we can really just all work together.
So today we're going to focus really on some of those challenges, right, that you've seen through your career. And for us as practitioners, how can we help, right? So let's start off with the first question of what have you seen as the biggest challenges in this area today?
So I'm going to step back. In prepping for this, I found a presentation from 2009 at ProcureCon. And specifically, I was asked to come and speak on supplier diversity, why it's important for the enterprise, what can we do to really build the program. And I had a slide that I just wanted to read a couple of the bullet points because the slide says, why do we work with diverse-owned companies? And as I read each one of these off, recognize that this was from 2009. We're now in 2022. And ask yourself each time I read the bullet point, have we figured that out yet? Or is it still the same, challenges, that we've had for the last, 15 years? So why do we work with diverse-owned companies? One, competitiveness. Two, around contractual requirements. Specifically, we have a diversity clause, or because there's a penalty, including, probation of future RFPs if we breach that diversity clause. We think that diverse-owned companies are more innovative. They have a similar corporate culture, say, to the enterprise organization, maybe better customer service. It's a partnership between the enterprise and the diverse-owned company because it may help them gain a new access into a new market. It requires a specific problem. So the diverse-owned, company is solving a specific problem that, say, a larger vendor couldn't solve. Perhaps less political, easier to navigate. And then finally, it's just the right thing to do because we want to spend more with our local communities, which are often small and mid-market companies, but also diverse owned. So I start with that because when I went back and looked at this, I feel like I could say that slide right now in 2022 and it would be the same.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I, you have to sit back and think, wow, that's 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So why? Why do you think?
I think there's, I'm not sure why we haven't moved the needle really forward since 2009, but if I look at what's happened to the supplier market in the last couple of years, we have this convergence of AI technologies. We were making decisions around diverse owned companies and how we're working with them with what we thought was the available data. But even as early as 3 years ago, the data was still unreliable. It wasn't formatted properly. We talk about dirty data in, dirty data out. And it's now with this emergence of AI technologies that suddenly we not only have more access to good data and we can make better informed decisions, but on top of that, it's really increased our supply base. So a lot of the diverse owned companies that I work with now, they're all, small, mid-market, even startups, but they're all out there with an AI related technology. And when you flip that over to the enterprise is now expecting a 40% increase in 2022. I've noted at least in a couple enterprise companies, they're working with 40% more new suppliers than they've ever had before. So now within the last couple of years, we have this huge influx of suppliers, diverse owned suppliers, and that's, minority owned, women owned, and all the nuances between LGBTQ2, et cetera. But then on the other side, we've got these enterprises that are still using, old policies and old processes, have an older culture, and the two just aren't connecting.
And what's interesting is when you look at that picture that you just painted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the 40% more suppliers, new suppliers into the supply base. I can appreciate that in my company as well. We see that, we call that, the new spend area, right? But why is it still so hard for these diverse companies
Mm-hmm.
to get into like the Fortune 100? We mentioned that you've been, mentoring and counseling on some of those types of industries and their diverse program. So why do you think it's so hard to
I
be
think
part of that 40%?
Yeah, no, I think we need to break that up into two specific areas. So we'll look at the supply side, at the supplier, but then we're also going to look at the enterprise. So from the enterprise perspective, processes. Their processes were designed on, older processes from 10, 15 years ago. Their processes aren't accounting for this influx of new vendors. They're focused more on preferred vendors or vendors that they've already awarded. So when we talk about is your supplier management ready? Most of the feedback I get is, well, we don't really account for one-off suppliers or such a high influx of new suppliers that need to be onboarded or vetted. There are some suppliers out there, we're seeing a lot more single source because they have a specific technology that's solving a very specific problem that a lot of those larger enterprise companies, aren't able to solve, or they can't find a, technology or a way to automate it. Then you look at the policies. There's policies out there. I think I estimated one policy, 3 bids and a buy, which is over 52 years old. It was created in the early 1900s as a part of World War I, I believe. And honestly, 3 bids and a buy, the policy itself hasn't changed. And that's almost, that's 100 years ago. So how can we expect as an enterprise to be able to adjust with these future disruptions, whether they're positive or negative? And what we've noticed is these disruptions are coming more and more. They're more frequently. But yet we're working with policies that have been around in our organization, or even if our organization's only 40 years old, the policy's been around for over 100 years. And then you add a layer, finally add that layer of culture. So the older cultures are, no, we need to do a transformation so that we can fix all this. Well, you don't have time to do a really good transformation and think you're going to have to do it again, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I spoke to a company last year who claimed they were on their 5th transformation in 17 years. And the challenges was that they never finished the other 4. So what makes the rest of the organization think that they're going to finish that 5th one? So there's a lot of, things that really come together that are creating that perfect storm that we're in. It's the processes aren't flexible enough. It's our policies are old, and it's the culture of not being able to understand that we need to adjust smaller adjustments, but more incrementally.
Yeah. So it brings to mind for me, we work throughout my entire career. I've worked with diverse suppliers, and I will tell you, there are some diverse suppliers out there. If Avis is out there from TCG, I'm telling you, she's an amazing woman, as a CEO of this very large minority company, woman-owned company. And but then you have these other suppliers who are also trying to get in, who don't have that strong leadership, don't have that, that the ability to get into the door, right? And so how do you, how do we as practitioners help to mentor some of these companies that are struggling to truly get in and to show their value to the organization? Because I know, as we continue to evolve, and as you say, the technologies are getting better and all of that, why should someone who is in procurement today look at those organizations, especially when it comes to technology? Because I know the biggest issue that I have from my stakeholders is trust, right? You have to trust the individuals coming in, and you've got some minority diverse companies that have that very large backing and have a lot of individuals who can bring in, and then you have some of the newer ones. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a lot. Great, lots of questions. So there's a couple different ways to look at that. So if we look at the industry itself, you mentioned the technologies, the application providers. They're shifting faster than, say, the enterprise is ready. So they've already come out and said, we're not going to try to solve all of the problems that you as a business are trying to solve. We just can't do that. We'll maybe solve for like 80% of the problems or 70% of the problems, because we can, focus R&D. And then on top of that, we're pushing some of that out into technology partners. So you're going to see a huge influx of technology partners, small companies that have applications that are physically, solving that one particular problem that these larger applications aren't going to do. And then that business model for them is to start partnering with other individuals who can now come in and implement it. So not only, that 40% that we talked about earlier, that's not only 40% of the suppliers creating the applications, but it's also going to be 40%. Part of that is all these other individuals who are now becoming implementation partners that maybe you hadn't worked with before. The other comment that I heard that you were making was around on the supplier side.
Right.
You asked a little bit more about the supplier side, and before we can understand how the enterprise can work better, we also need to flip that around and talk about how the suppliers can do better, because it's not always one or the other. It's got to be both making some adjustments. And in talking to a lot of in technology, I think is where you're going to find some challenges. A lot of these technologies are patent pending, or they're patented, and there's a lot of them out there. But yet, as a minority owner, the ones that I've spoken to the most, their biggest hurdle is pricing. How do I price this in a way that is going to be marketable, but recognizing that I've put, 5 years of research into this before I actually started selling it to the public. So that piece of it there. And then there's also how to sell themselves. Oftentimes there's this balance between I gave them, I talked too much and really didn't help them understand, where I am, why I'm here, what's my purpose, what problems am I trying to solve, what's my technology doing. And then on the other hand, it's, well, I didn't tell them enough and they have no idea who I am. So they're going to go talk to somebody else. So there's a lot of things that a lot of these businesses that we're just talking about, a lot of these folks didn't go to business school. They have these brilliant ideas. They were able to get funding. They don't have a lot of business background, but yet I've met folks who have sold 2 companies before they're, 30, but yet they have no business background and didn't really understand the concept of marketing or sales. So there's a lot of going on that the enterprise folks aren't visible to. And then there's a lot going on the supplier side where they need to speak that language because that's what the enterprise is communicating in.
Yeah. And, you brought up an excellent point about, these companies not having some of that business acumen. And I know that a lot of companies have come through with mentoring programs for diverse suppliers. I know I participated in quite a few. So if your company has that, I would highly recommend that you look into it to see if you can actually participate and help some of those suppliers do that. And listen to what Melissa's saying today and provide that guidance. So I see Anu is out there, my dear friends. It's great to see your little comment here and your questions. So Melissa, we have our first question in. How much do companies track if diversity is cascaded down beyond supplier diversity? So I think this might be the tier 2.
I was going to ask if we could clarify that, if that's what she was asking.
I think so. When you talk about today, I just had this conversation yesterday with my supplier diversity person here at Corteva, Michelle Morin, and we were talking about tier 2, and we're going to start tracking tier 2 in 2023. So yeah, tier 2 and their own suppliers and the employees that they have, et cetera. So we're actually going to start that program. We're going to start this year, but we really know that exactly what you said, Melissa, we have the challenge of being able to track all that information. Where do we put it and how do we validate that it's correct and all of that good stuff that goes along with having the tier 2 ones. But so let me ask the question that Anu asked to you. How much do companies track of diversity in the tier 2 space? And also, I would also say it sounds like their supply base as well. So
right. I think what's interesting about that question is it's not just about how many companies or are companies tracking tier 2, because a lot of companies want to track tier 2. A lot of companies say they're tracking tier 2. A lot of companies have to, specifically in financial services, because of regulatory requirements, that they have to track the contractor and then any subcontractors that are related to that. The question really comes back to, do they have the data? Is it the right data? Is it are they collecting the right data? Do they have the reporting so that they're confident and comfortable that they are tracking? So in other words, I see lots of companies who claim they're tracking tier 2, but what I don't see is the comfort and the accuracy around it, because either some companies are still fluid in the definition of diversity. So my background is I was on the Northeast committee for WeBank for certifications. So being on that committee means that my job was to go out and talk to, diverse suppliers and validate that they really own 51%. So for me, diversity is not someone who self-reported and said, I'm a woman-owned company and I'm diverse. I mean, I could do that right now. I have a company and I'm diverse. It's really making sure that documentation is there, that certification is there and updated. So if I look at that and get that out of the way, then it's okay. Now I need to track and make sure I've got the information updated, that the certifications are updated. And then finally, looking at their tier 2 and subcontractors. So I'm going to go back with my original answer. Yeah, I'm all in. My original answer. It's not about are they, because I find a lot of companies are doing it. I'm just not sure that they're doing it well enough. And I'm not sure that they've actually got the right data, or they've done it the right way.
Yeah, and I also think that it's something that I don't want to say, not that companies haven't been tracking it, but I do think it's something that's coming to light, right? It's becoming more and more prevalent in the ask that we as procurement individuals have within our companies to say, how are you doing business? It's kind of also goes along with the sustainability question, right? Of what are you doing in that space as well? So very interesting there. So from, one of the challenges that I've had in the past is really, especially when we talk about those diverse suppliers that are in the technology space, right? So I'm going to bring it right down to that, and that is getting that buy-in from your CIO or from the senior leaders within your organization to support this diverse program, right? I'm very fortunate here at Corteva. I have a couple individuals within the, what I'll call IT leadership team, that are definitely advocates and talk about how do we increase that and how do we do more there. But I've been in other companies where that has not been an ask or has not been. So, what advice would you give us as procurement individuals there to get that buy-in? What could we be doing better?
Hold on. Sorry. Kids just came home from school.
And we're still in that real world, right?
I know.
It still happens. So that's good.
I love this question. One, I think it's a really difficult question to answer. And the reason I say that is because so much we've been trying to drive diverse, the mindset of diverse suppliers and the importance of it. And we can write a full white paper on it and we can have really clear thoughts. But if your leadership is not going to, it's not about, is leadership going to buy into it? It's, is leadership going to do anything about it? And I think that's the phrase here that I want to shift is, it's not about getting buy-in from senior leaders, because if senior leaders aren't going to step up, then there's nothing for them to buy in. I have this phrase that I've came up with last year. It's called the front seat leader. And up until now, our leadership has been sitting in the back seat and letting the day-to-day folks drive. But unfortunately, because the leader has not come up to the front seat to help drive that, we feel like we're just going in circles or we're just going around the block. That's my analogy. So it's a cultural shift. You're going to get a lot of people who are true advocates. And at one point in time, we came up with this concept of the diversity network and having advocates in each of our business units. And that's great. And that's going to get you, halfway down the road. But if your leadership is not up here driving that driving that mindset that this is what you need to do, then we're going to be probably why I made the comment earlier. Those were the things that we thought were progressive in 2009, the bullet points that I read from that slide. But yet I also feel like you that I don't feel like we've made a lot of change since then. So for me, I'm not really answering the question. I apologize. The question really, I'm hoping that leadership is listening to this. That's what needs to happen. Leadership needs to be listening to this question. And you either need to do something about it, or if not, then find somebody on your committee who's an advocate who wants to have a voice and be able to be that executive sponsor. So I think my challenge when I'm working, not as a consultant, but I'm in the industry and I'm trying to get what I thought was the buy-in, I felt like I kept hitting a wall. And then I would change jobs and go to another company. And I'm like, wow, this was really easy. Why was it so much easier with company B than it was company A? Because the leadership in company B was also thinking and was on the same page as I was. The leadership in company A just never thought it was important. And no matter how many times I hit them over the head with my long list of things that are important, they weren't going to do anything about it. So I had to learn very, very early on, accepting how far I could get it on my own without leadership, and recognizing that I may not be able to get the program where I need to in the company I'm working for, which is not a really nice thing to say, because I know we're all about, let's try to get a list of things that we can do. But like I said, pros and cons.
Exactly. And I did write down that front seat leader. I think that's a great statement for everybody. If there's a little knowledge nugget here going home, it's think about your leadership. I know we have our diversity and our inclusion and diversity, and part of that is an equity is supplier diversity, and that's part of it. And it's part of our executive leadership teams. That's how one of the measurements for them, right? So this is really important, and I agree with you. They're in the front seat on this too with us, and it does make it at least from the perspective of bringing in a supplier and talking about it. But
I'm going to add. Can we add something to this question?
Yeah,
we should also define leader, because there are ways that you can navigate around this. If the leader that you're talking to, someone in the C-suite, and you don't think that they're going to get it, or they just don't want anything to do with it, that's okay. Go find someone else. And oftentimes it's not necessarily we have to go directly to the C-suite to get that buy-in. It's not necessarily we have to go to a senior VP. There's a lot of times where I found a VP level individual who had relationships, very close relationships with the C-suite, because up to a certain point, diversity is great, but then you need funding. You need to have some level of funding to really make this program, bloom. So what I've tried to do as, my career progresses is I've started to step back and really assess the leadership. Which ones do I think I'm going to be able to have a conversation with? Recognize the ones that I do have a conversation with, don't keep pushing and pushing, because then I'm pushing them away. Find someone in the company, doesn't have to be a C-suite, but someone in the company who really understands what we're trying to do and wants to be an advocate for it, but also has maybe a relationship with some of the folks in the C-suite. So I've really had to come at this and find creative ways to navigate around it. And sometimes those workarounds ended up becoming better than what I had originally hoped for.
Yes, and that I've had that experience myself, so I can that's why I'm sitting here going, that's exactly some of the things I've had to do, right? For bringing in a diverse supplier, or even just having that advocate who is going to take it forward to that next level that's needed for the funding that you talked about, which is really important in some of these situations as well. And but one of the things that I also think from a supplier diversity perspective is that, we also need to understand who are those suppliers that you could bring into the company that will provide that reputation and the quality of service that will then elevate the thought of supplier diversity in the company. I've seen that also work. How about yourself? Have you seen that?
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
To clarify.
I think it was me asking you, so I'm not quite sure.
Let me ask you a question. So are you making an assumption that, because you mentioned the word credibility, you mentioned the word, a couple other words in there, the adjectives. So are you making an assumption that a diverse supplier needs to be out there in their field working with other companies for X amount of years before you feel like they're ready to work with you?
No, I think what I'm really getting at is what have they been able to do and what have they brought to other companies and showcase. So you talked about before, some of them not having this business acumen or be able to sell themselves, right? And I think prior you had shared a story with me about somebody that you were mentoring and what they went through to kind of sell what they do, right? And the technology that they are patent pending, right? And so what's a good way for us to showcase, and I guess that's a good way, showcase these suppliers in our company?
So the number one feedback I get from diverse owned suppliers about what they feel, and again, it's a perception, is that they don't think that they're having a difficult time getting their foot in the door. And most of them all believe that if they can just get 15 minutes in front of somebody in procurement within their area, so if they're in marketing, marketing, et cetera, technology, then they feel like they can really help them understand that there is a specific problem out there that maybe you weren't aware of, that they've solved with their patent pending or patented technology or their AI solution. And it's probably you weren't aware of them. And some of these companies I've spoken to have been around for 16 years, but you may have never heard of them, but they've got really specific technology that's solving problems that are out there. And then, on the flip side, there are companies that have been working on their AI solutions for 3-4 years and are just now in the marketplace. And so the perception from the enterprise is that they feel like they're very new, like they don't have anything. So like I said, it's coming back to both sides. So now repeat that question again.
Ooh, let me see if I can remember. I am getting older.
No, you're fine.
So, no, so my question really was around, how do they bring themselves into an organization and sell that they can, this is the trust factor that I talked to you about, right? That a company can understand the value creation that they would bring to the table so that they would be able to get in that door that you talked and get that, I'll say, buy-in for all intents and purposes, but I loved how you talked about the leaders and so forth, but really getting that, having that ability. And I think you touched on it already, right? To showcase what they bring to the table.
The best thing that I've seen work was a company who once a quarter, they had a form that they put out there and they said, any diverse company, small business, et cetera, who wants to share what they do, their technology, fill out this form. And once a quarter, we will have, and it used to be in person, but now it's virtual. We will have virtual quarterly reviews where, for like a, I'm not going to call it a supplier summit because that's such a
like speed dating.
Yeah, it's kind of like speed. Yes, thank you. I love that. It's like speed dating. And it was a way to allow the procurement professionals to see the new technology that was out there that maybe they wouldn't find because we don't all go to conferences like we really want to. It's more difficult now, I think, to find these suppliers because of COVID and this work from home relationship and lack of traveling, funding that we have for traveling. So this company said, well, let's reverse it. Let's open the doors. Let's have, everybody fill out a form. And then about, prior to that quarterly speed dating, I want every of my procurement professional to tell me what's in their pipeline. What kind of things are in their pipeline? What kind of business challenges are your stakeholders trying to solve? We'll see if we can match it with anybody who's out there, who's filled out our form. And then we'll invite them to the speed dating and we'll give them, 15 minutes. And, I've actually listened to one of those. I was fortunate enough that I got to be a listener, and it was fantastic. I mean, these suppliers, they prepped. Some of them needed a little bit more guidance. Some of them didn't. They had either, a video that they had just hit play on, or they had some slides. They allocated time. They came back later the next day for speed dating questions. Here's the questions that we want. Can you answer them? And in most cases, from that particular company, they did end up working with one or two of those every quarter.
That's me. I actually took notes on that because I think that's a great suggestion.
That's the best. Now, granted, I don't want to, I know that, ISM New York and ISM New Jersey, they have supplier diversity committees. I know that they've reached out to their, local organizations. They're doing the Supplier Diversity Expo. Obviously, if you want more information, you can reach out to.
I was actually going to do the same thing you just did.
But that's great because it's getting the idea out there. But then I think the organization should not just do that once a year with the, the ISM organizations. They should take that a little bit further. So there's a lot of creative ways, and this is just one, but there's a lot of
Right.
creative ways that, and it goes back to win-win. You know, we've got more APIs, we've got more technology, we've got more emerging technologies, and this is where we really need to have more visibility into those suppliers, not less, in this technology space.
Yeah, so I'm going to go off cuff from what we've talked about before and ask you a question because you brought this up about COVID. And I know nobody wants to hear that anymore, but you know, one of the areas I think that at least I've seen in my industry where we were able to see the innovation, the agile performance and so forth were in our diverse suppliers. So let me give you an example. We needed PPE and we had, you know, a very large supplier and we had our diverse supplier, and we went to our diverse supplier who's able to help us and also help our employees get some PPE, get the personal protection equipment is the PPE, but the masks and sanitizer and so forth and so on. And so, because they were able to move faster, they were able to do some commitments. Have you seen an increase in the utilization of diverse suppliers, either during that time period or now, you know, because now we're, you know, all, you know, here at Corteva, we really appreciate the efforts that this supplier went through and in fact, continue to go through for us.
Within specific areas where the company found that they needed, and the only reason they went to those diverse suppliers is because they weren't getting what they needed from their own suppliers. So in this case, it was reactive.
Okay.
Am I seeing a continually increase in that proactive reaching out and seeing what your diverse suppliers can do for you? No. And I say that with, you know, a lot of heartfelt no. It should be. COVID COVID really shined a light on a lot of things.
Right.
But one of the things that it shined really more of a light on is the supply chain. And I'm finding more focus right now on corporate funding around supply chain fixes and looking at diverse suppliers in that area. But what I'm not finding is, oh my gosh, COVID really showed us that our diverse suppliers really can do a lot and they have a lot more purpose and value. We should continue this effort. No, I'm seeing we had a pocket, yay. We're seeing a pocket over in supply chain, yay. But it's this continual pockets of where I'm being reactive, not again what we're trying to do, which is change the cultural mindset, you know, really move forward and do this. And ESG, I mean, if someone's thinking about ESG, yes, ESG is now up on the top of the list. It's getting the focus, it's getting the attention. It's again, it's a reactive. We're seeing a lot of diverse suppliers within the ESG and supplier risk and companies that have been around for a long time that you knew, that a lot of you guys knew about, but you didn't reach out and talk to them until, again, a reactive component.
That was very insightful, by the way, because I didn't actually think about it that way. And so, but after you've stated it from a reactive perspective, that's exactly what transpired. But I took the note on the proactive of doing that every quarter to pull that together, because I think that is a fabulous way to increase supplier diversity within your companies.
You know, we should get some of the people listening to go pilot this for a quarter.
Yes.
And then really, and then come back to you and talk about it. What worked, what didn't work, share those lessons learned, because that's the other piece. You know, procurement professionals share and talk to each other all the time.
Right.
Like I remember being a procurement professional at a cosmetic firm in New York City. And, you know, people talk and, hey, you don't want that supplier. You know, I blacklisted them because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, I probably won't want to work with them. But we're not doing the opposite. Oh my gosh, this diverse supplier was there, or this just supplier was fantastic. And oh, by the way, they are certified. And I know you guys were looking to increase your numbers. We don't do that. It's that same, you know, cultural mindset that we've been trying to foster for this conversation.
Absolutely. So I know we only have a few more minutes left, so I do want to open the floor up. If there's any other additional questions that you all have, please get them either in the question or the chat. The chat's fine too. You can just put it in there and I'll read them, and Melissa and I can address them. But just wanted, so while we're waiting for that, Melissa, I noticed on LinkedIn that it says that you are working on a book. Can you tell us?
I am. Yeah. Although now I think I need to write another one. I haven't finished the first one yet. And I'm like, oh, I got an idea. Yeah. So I've been in this industry for quite some time. Yes, I just saw the note popped up. I can see the messaging.
Okay, good.
You want to answer that one?
Good.
Why don't you answer that one?
Well, this is that they're asking if we could post the information about the Supplier Diversity Expo. So ISM New Jersey has them in May, and I believe New York's is coming up, right? Isn't that shortly? I think.
Yeah, I know they had to pause, due to, some of the lockdowns last year, but they're bringing back their annual conferences in New York. They're bringing back the annual Supplier Diversity Expos. So yeah.
Yeah, so Sandy, what we'll do is, Kathy, I'm sure we'll take your name down and we'll send you that information as well, so that you have that for when that happens. I actually thought you were asking about, so what were the questions that the company that you referred to that would ask about what they needed and what kind of supplier are you looking for and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get into that. I'm sure somebody will ask that question as well. So fantastic. Thanks. Awesome. So we interrupted you in speaking about your book.
No, you're fine. I'm just taking up time while other people think of really great questions, or not, just any question to ask. So I've been working in transformation, business transformation, before technology existed, then technology existed, and then supplier diversity was a thing, and then supplier risk. And going back to the comment that I made around the slide from 2009, I'm not seeing a lot of things moving forward. And there's a lot of reasons why, talent is leaving. We've got a lot of our experts that are leaving the workforce, as the baby boomers in the next 7 years. And the talent that's coming behind the Generation X doesn't really want to stay in one, doesn't matter if it's one company, they just don't tend to stay in one focused area. So while they may be procurement this, for a couple of years, they'll shift and go work on a startup, and then they'll shift and go work in marketing, and they'll shift and go work on an oil rig or something. I mean, they're kind of all over the place. So the expertise that we've been building isn't coming behind us to take over. So as a part of this, I started realizing, well, here's all the things that really should be changing. 100-year-old, 3 bids and a buy. So the book goes through each one of those procurement processes and highlights, here's why it's not working, and here's how, what we've been doing today. Here's some of the things that you guys can consider to maybe make a difference in your own company.
Excellent. I can't wait to read it. I'm going to be one of the first ones. So, so Anu had another question, and it's, the financial services has a roundtable, and I do know about this because when I worked for Chubb, Evelyn Chen, who participated in that roundtable for sharing supplier diversity best practices, including sharing information of good suppliers. Do you know of any similar ones in other industries?
I know the $1 billion roundtable does put out, at one point they used to actually print a book of diverse suppliers. It was almost like a telephone
directory,
a directory, right?
Yeah.
And then it shifted to digital, and then I really don't know what happened to it after that. But they're constantly coming out with more lessons learned, leading practices. I won't say the word best practices, because leading practices, it changes as things change. Off the top of my head, that's the one I know that would share both content and suppliers. WeBank, NMSDC, they're always going to be sharing suppliers on their websites. If you haven't been to a WeBank or NMSDC conference, I recommend at least going to one.
Yeah, and the NMSDC one is coming up at the end of October in New Orleans. So I do know that because Corteva will be participating and I will be there. So
good.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
good.
really excited about that
But
as well.
I like the question because it makes me, now that he or she has asked the question, it makes me realize that there's still a gap. Like if that question's being asked, then we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. In communicating, where do we find those good suppliers? So, so in wrapping up, I just want to, thank you for participating today and sharing all of this great knowledge with us, Melissa. I truly, truly do appreciate it. And any final words, advice on this subject for everyone who's listening?
That's a hard one. There's just so much we can do. I would probably say, really think about where to focus your energy, like don't do what I did and just keep hitting my head against the same, executive person because I thought he or she should have been the sponsor. I've had more success, and I think, Tamra, you've mentioned it as well, in looking at alternate ways. I'd say the other thing is to answer this question that just popped up. If we're not networking together as professionals, procurement professionals, and talking about the suppliers that we're doing business with, I would say that's something else that we need to do. Those, I think that's kind of, working upward, but then there's also working together. And I know sometimes procurement people don't come together, but in these scenarios, it makes a lot of sense to share information. Those are my top two based on what we talked about today.
Well,
do you have any, Tamra?
Well, what's interesting is I took in some of the words that I took from what you said, right? Be proactive versus reactive. Go find that front seat leader that, really needs to do that. We're stuck in processes from what sounds like, the 1900s. And so we need to really, as a procurement practice, look at them and validate whether they should still be utilized in 2022. And then also, 40%, in 2022, 40% of spend is going to be done with large companies with new suppliers, right? So how can we be proactive with that 40%? So those were just some of the notes that I took from everything that you said, which was incredible. And thank you. And I want to thank also the audience for coming today and participating in the first kickoff of Tea Time with Tamra. And so if you have enjoyed this, please let us know. I know Kathy has asked me if I'd like to do a couple more of these as a series. And of course I would love to, but I'd love to hear what you would like to hear about. And I hope you enjoyed yourself. So thank you so much for spending some time with Melissa and I today. Melissa, again, you are such a dear, absolutely adore spending this time with you. And Kathy and ISM New Jersey, thank you for asking us to participate in this. So Kathy, back to you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you both coming on and doing this program. Just a lot of good information was coming out. Thank you so much, Melissa. We do appreciate all your guidance and your thoughts and wisdom that you're.
And Kathy, when her book comes out, we have to do this again, so I can hear more about her book, and everybody can hear about that. So we'll have to do a book launch.
We definitely have to do a book launch. Yeah. Definitely.
This was fun.
I just want to close the program out. I want to say thank you to our audience. Thanks, Tamra and Melissa, for joining us today. We do have a couple of programs next week, so we'll be sending information out on that shortly. And I will be sending out a follow-up email with the recording of today. And also, everybody gets continuing educational credit for joining us today as well. So at this point, I'll close out the program and thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.